We've been talking about consumer price response or how incentive systems drive behaviours. With 4 minutes to the bell, that's left me with only 4 things to talk about then. The first one is why we did the project we did with ECA, what we did, what we found, and after picking on pricing managers before, I've actually got some questions for them. And rather than mangling a sports analogy, I'm going to mangle Lynn's car analogy from the intro at the start of the day. So we will change topics slightly. Now, before I start, I'd like to know my audience. Everyone here is between the age of 18 and 65. I'm guessing the last bit. I assume that everyone here is responsible for an electricity bill and is therefore a consumer. So raise your hand if you're an electricity consumer in the sense of paying the bill. Great. Raise your hand if you work for a retailer. Great, now I know where the questions are coming from. And for a network. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So what we did for ECA was a project called the Retail Choice Project. So choice for whom? It was choice for you, choice for the consumers. Now, to actually generate those choices, retailers need to make decisions about the prices they set for you. And they make those decisions, as we just made the point, on the basis of the network tariffs or the network tariff shape that's provided to them. So why were we thinking about retail choice? Well, the Olympiad for network pricing was coming up in New South Wales, Tasmania and the ACT, and there was going to be some big changes. So in New South Wales, people were moving from flat to time of use. In the ACT and Tasmania, there was movement from time of use pricing towards maximum demand pricing. And so the question was, how are retailers going to respond to these changed network structures? What are they going to do? Because ultimately, consumers pay the price, they don't interact with the tariff. That's why we did the work. Then what did we do? The 8-minute stat, which we need to source appropriately at some point, of how often consumers think about their bill, we went and applied that 8-minute process at greater depth, so I don't know, 16 minutes, 32 minutes, to hundreds of tariffs. So we looked at the 3 gentailers competing in New South Wales, we looked at the retailers in the ACT, the monopoly retailer in Tasmania, and we're like, right, what are their retail structures, their price structures, and then we looked at the underpinning network structures. We spent more than 8 minutes per tariff, let me assure you. After having built that database, I would have been happy just to send Lynn a bill for that and stop there. We then decided we needed to do something with it to understand what this change in tariff structure was going to do to the prices consumers saw. So we used the load profiles that are in the public domain for those 3 states, which are the Energy Networks Australia prices that were used in the National Transformation Roadmap work. So applying those load profiles, which is a limited basket of profiles, and it's not perfect. And so coming back to our car analogy, it's like a car's driving past, and this is terrible. I'm the policeman with the radar gun and I'm just looking at a snapshot. I told you it was terrible. And that's all we've got is this snapshot view of this change has occurred, what have the retailers done, what have the networks done. So if we looked at the structure change that the networks did for a given load profile, before and after, they tended to try and deliver a slightly lower price to make the new structure look more attractive to consumers. So broadly speaking, if you went from a flat price, here's my usage rate, that was my outcome. If we moved you to time of use, you just slipped a little bit, 5% or something on the total annualised bill for that load profile. So they'd been very strategic about the way they thought about the time slices, peak, off-peak, shoulder, whatever the structure was, and the level of prices within that. That's just for the network component. But retail pricing guys don't think that way. They think that last year the consumer paid $1,000. Next year the consumer will be willing to pay maybe 5% more than that based on the fact that they're exposed to CPI, cost of living pressures across everything else. And there's this chat in the media about how electricity prices are going up. Awesome. So for that load profile, the networks charge me less. It stays the same or goes up. And so then they go and, well, now that I know my willingness to pay, let's slice up that retail bill across those network structures. So where should I go put it? Well, the peak demand, or the peak time of use charge, sorry, it looked a bit scary. It was at 28 cents. Well, we might move that to 32 cents. That sounds good. But no one looks at the controlled load charge. That was 2 cents when I got it from the network. 6 cents sounds great. Off-peak was 4 cents, 10 cents sounds great. The bill still ends up at the same place, but a very different price signal than what the network tariff manager sent. So that was what we found. It all sounds very Machiavellian, as though there's in a darkened room somewhere inside a large company, there's a group of people manically laughing to themselves going, ha ha ha, we've got the consumer. But I think it's just the pressure of wanting to make sure their consumers don't have bill shock. I actually think it's actually coming from a really good place, which is let's give price certainty to our consumers. Let's not, these price signals are actually really scary, you don't know what to do with them, as we talked before about communication and making sure people understand the reason for change. It's just so much easier to smooth this all out. So for those of you taking notes, let's look at slide 14 in Neil's pack when it is made available. You'll see the downward sloping demand curve for the difference between peak and off-peak price and the reduction in peak demand. Well, our retailers are moving us down that curve, and so we're having a lessening impact on peak demand. That's the key takeaway really from the retail choice study that's been completed here, is you've got a muting of the price signal. And if you think that the price signal between, say, a demand charge and a flat charge, or between a peak time of use charge and off-peak time of use charge, is what gives consumers choice, and they can apply technology to take advantage of that choice, then maybe consumers don't have as much choice as perhaps the networks would like them to have. I've got a minute left, and then I have 3 questions for pricing managers. So, we were asked to consider what a retail cost-reflective price would look like. We think about cost-reflective prices for networks all the time, and Ahmed led us through a bit of a discussion about some of the balance between time of use charging, fixed charging, demand charging. But if you think about a retailer's cost to serve, what should be their loading on top of the network fixed charge? What are their universal costs that don't vary by time, 24 hours, 365 days of the year, and do they bear any relation to the margin or the excess they charge on top of the network fixed charge? A thought. Do they genuinely have a peak pricing problem? So a network sends a peak price signal at whatever cents per kilowatt hour it might be in a time of use structure, and that might coincide with high prices in the wholesale market. But if I'm a gentailer with my own generation, or I'm a smaller retailer who knows I'm exposed to the spot market and I've hedged everything, do I actually have a coincident peak or not? A thought. Finally, if I have put some sort of hedge in place, or I have got an alternate profit stream because I own generation, and I've got off-peak energy being used, do I have any charge at all? I mean, haven't I already recovered that money some other way, or haven't I already insured that? So how much should the markup be on the off-peak component if I've already got price certainty from the arrangements I've made in the wholesale market? Should I be recovering everything on the peak or everything on the off-peak? Again, a question. I'm not quite sure where we go, but what the project has showed is that the retailers in our current structure are really incentivised to deliver price certainty, and networks are trying to deliver price signals. And those two things are necessarily in conflict.